Back in ancient time, the first cavemen befriended wolves, which was the start of a beautiful relationship. The relationship only grew closer since then, and now modern dogs are considered man's best friend. If you didn't believe it already, you should just take a look at a few of the cases in which dogs have helped humans face impossible odds. Even more heartwarming are the following 10 real-life stories where dogs saved babies and children. From the dog who saved a baby in the jungle to the hero who sacrificed himself to save a baby from a house fire. Saved from a car. In 2013 in Atlanta, Georgia, Dave Furukawa was walking with his 4-year-old son Will to school with their guide dog, Simon. Dave is visually impaired and relies on his boxer dog to help guide him. As they all crossed the street, a person driving a Chrysler ran a stop sign, hitting the dog and then Dave. Even though Simon had been hit badly, he quickly got up and pushed the 4-year-old out of harm's way. From there, onlookers took over, carrying the child down the street to his house to make sure he was safe. Amazingly, even though Simon the boxer had suffered a broken leg, a gash on his side, and internal bleeding, he followed them home to make sure that Will was safe. Although he was rushed to an emergency vet clinic, he died on the way. Thankfully, Will's father wasn't hurt too badly. He only had a few broken bones. Saved from the babysitter. Next on our list is the amazing Labrador Shepherd mix named Killian. Killian's owners had a 7-month son named Finn, who they decided to leave with a babysitter. However, the babysitter who they hired came under suspicion when Killian would constantly growl and snarl at her. The hair would stand on the back of his neck and he would stand between her and the baby. Although she passed a background check, the family suspected something was off regardless. They left an iPhone underneath the couch to record audio, thinking perhaps the babysitter was abusing the dog. What they heard was even more shocking. The babysitter could be heard verbally and physically abusing the baby. After this discovery, the parents quickly took Finn to the hospital for a checkup. Luckily, he was perfectly healthy. Who knows what might have happened without Killian issuing an early warning to kick off the investigation? The babysitter was sentenced to 3 years in prison, and now Killian is training to become a psychiatric service animal. Saved from the dryer. In 2018, a 5-year-old named Riley, who suffers from Down syndrome, was playing downstairs near the washer and dryer with his cockapoo named Teddy. Riley climbed inside the dryer and shut the door, not expecting that it would turn on. That's exactly what happened, however. Luckily, Teddy knew something was wrong and ran upstairs to alert Riley's mother by barking and growling. The mother immediately began searching for Riley. That's when Riley's older brother saw an iPad in the dryer through the glass window, and they quickly got him out. Although little Riley suffered from burns, there were no additional injuries from the incident. Without the help of Teddy, this could have been fatal for Riley. Teddy was honored by the veterinary charity PDSA by receiving the PDSA Gold Medal. This medal is awarded to animals for their life-saving bravery and exceptional devotion to duty, which Teddy certainly showed. Saved from a kidnapping. The Garzon Jimenez family in Indianapolis, Indiana encountered a worst-case scenario when their nightmares almost came true. Their mother, Nayeli, was at home with her 3-month-old daughter on the phone with her husband who was at work. That's when she heard glass breaking. 2 armed robbers, a male and a female, had made their way into the house and demanded money or they would take the baby. Garzon Jimenez didn't have any money on her, so the female robber grabbed the baby. The male robber then hit Nayeli over the head with his pistol. As the female robber tried to flee through the back door with the baby, she was forced back inside by the family's snarling gray pit bull. The female robber then threw the baby back to the mother and both robbers escaped out the front door. Because of the brave pit bull, the baby was uninjured. Saved from drowning. The next heroic dog on the list is Bear, a black Labrador from Michigan who did the incredible. One day, Patricia Draw was home with her children, including Stanley, who was only 14 months old. Like all toddlers, Stanley liked to waddle along and follow his mom around the house. Patricia was walking to her garage to return some garden tools with Stanley right behind her, when suddenly, he disappeared. Patricia looked everywhere for the toddler and eventually found him face up in the family pool. Stanley was unconscious but amazingly floating atop the water, all thanks to Bear. The dog had managed to swim underneath the boy and bring him to the surface, balancing him on his back and keeping his head above the water. Bear had to keep perfectly still as he floated under the baby. Even barking might put the boy's life in danger. Patricia was able to get her son out and drove him to the nearest fire station because she had no cell reception. Thankfully, Stanley regained consciousness on the way and had no lasting damage. Saved from a fire. Get your tissues ready for this one. In Baltimore, a mother had just stepped outside her home for a moment, leaving her 8-month-old daughter inside with their dog Polo. In just that brief moment, the home went up in flames. The mother and her neighbors tried to get into the house to save the baby by breaking down the doors and kicking in the windows, but the smoke was too much. She was able to run inside the house for just a few seconds, but had to exit as she couldn't breathe or see. Just from trying to enter the house, she suffered burns to her face and hands. Eventually, firefighters showed up and were able to extinguish the flames. What they found was amazing. Polo had kept the baby safe. He used his body as a shield from the flames. Although the child suffered burns on her arms, side, and face, she survived the fire. Polo sadly passed away after performing the ultimate act of bravery. Saved from the frost. An unnamed dog was a hero in the Altai region of Russia in 2017. A 2-year-old boy had been left abandoned by his mother on the unheated porch of his home. It would be 2 days until he was found by neighbors. In those 2 days, a long-haired white dog came along and wrapped his body around the boy, who was wearing only light clothing. Temperatures in this region averaged 10.4 degrees Fahrenheit and went as low as negative 5.8 degrees Fahrenheit. Being out in these temperatures for just 30 minutes is enough to cause frostbite. The dog kept him warm enough, however, that the boy survived the entire 2 days, only suffering from acute hypothermia. Without this unnamed hero, the cold could have been fatal for the boy. Saved from a crash. Another heroic dog on our list is Sako, a 4-year-old King Shepherd from British Columbia. In 2014, 16-year-old Joseph Phillips Garcia went out with his aunt, cousin, friend, and dog for a day of fishing and potato picking. On the way back home, the car careened off the road and fell down a steep hill more than 300 feet into the forest. Sadly, only Joseph and Sako survived as they were thrown from the vehicle. It would be 40 hours until they would be rescued, but the teenager was as safe as he could get thanks to Sako. When Joseph regained consciousness, he could barely move due to a broken femur and broken collarbone. Luckily, Sako was able to help drag the boy to a nearby creek for water. Sako also fought off coyotes at night when he heard them getting near. He jumped right up and went into the woods to fight them off. He then cuddled closely to the 16-year-old, keeping him warm throughout the night. A few years later, Sako was inducted into the Purina Animal Hall of Fame, which honors domestic animals whose actions have saved human lives. Without Sako, this situation could have been much, much worse. Saved from a snake. Dogs are known to be loyal even to family they haven't been with long. For an example of this, just take a look at Khan, a Doberman Pinscher from Australia. Abused and starving with broken ribs, he had luckily been rescued by the Svilsek family. Just 4 days later, he would show them his bravery. 17-month-old Charlotte Svilek was playing outside in the garden with her dog Khan when he began acting aggressively towards her, trying to push her away from the garden. What Charlotte's mother Catherine hadn't realized at that moment was that Khan had seen a king brown snake, which is the 3rd most venomous snake in the world. The snake was just about to strike Charlotte when Khan, as described by Charlotte, grabbed her by the back of the nappy and threw her over his shoulder more than a meter. After Charlotte was out of harm's way, Khan took the bite on the paw. The dog was able to run inside before he collapsed. Thankfully, the single bite didn't deliver enough venom to be lethal. Still, a vet came by and gave him an anti-venom shot. Khan was feeling much better by the next day. This heroic dog is known as Khan the Wonder Dog by the family. Saved from abandonment. One incredible dog hails from Nairobi, Kenya. The unnamed street dog lived at a compound with a poor family who fed the dogs as much as they could. The family had children in the family, so the dog was familiar with children and babies. One day, while scavenging for food, the dog found a 2-day-old baby wrapped in rags and laying in a plastic bag in the Ngong forest. The dog, who had raised puppies of her own, picked up the baby and crossed a busy road. The dog wove through the traffic with the baby and brought her to the shack where the dog lived with her puppies. 2 children of the nearby family found the baby after they heard her crying. The children then told their parents, who brought the baby to the hospital where she recovered after several weeks of intensive care. The baby was later adopted by a family. The Kenya SPCA took in the dog and named her Mkombozi. which means savior. She lived at the SPCA teaching school children about animal welfare until she passed away in 2014. No matter who you are, these stories of bravery are universal. Aside from these small handful of events, there are thousands of cases where a dog came to the rescue for its human friends. If you know a story like these, leave it in the comments.